Hello everyone, welcome back to another project. So in this we're gonna build mental health chatbot. So which is responsible and intelligent companion designed to provide emotional support and wellness tips through a natural conversations. So in this project we're gonna use fast API and OpenAI's powerful language model. So this chatbot remembers each user session, offers a personalized responses and detect crisis related messages to suggest helplines and safety resources. So it also supports a document based responses using Llama Index, which allows the user to ask questions from the mental health content. So every conversation is securely logged for auditing purposes, ensuring the transparency and accountability. So even this project contains a modern website where we embed the chatbot UI for the smooth user experiences, making it ideal for the integration into health platforms or educational portals. So let's start building. All right, so let's start with the process. Okay, so first, let's create an empty folder for our project. Let me go to my downloads, and here let me just create a new folder. I'll just name this folder as Euron. Euron, AI powered, or I can say Euron, um, mental health, mental health chatbot, mental health chatbot. Okay, so let me just open this folder, and currently this is the empty folder. And in this project, I'll be using Anaconda Navigator to create an environments. So in case if you're familiar with the VNV module, you can even try to create an environments using those things. But creating an environment is mandatory because so if you're working with different projects, so that there'll be a dependencies issues. Okay, so make sure just to create a new environment whenever you're working with agentic AI projects. So as I told you, so I'll be using a Conda environments. Okay. So if you don't have Conda, you can just go to Chrome and install the Anaconda Navigator. So if you have installed the Anaconda Navigator, you can just look for Anaconda prompt. Okay. So if you open the Anaconda, if you can see the Anaconda prompt, it means that there is an Anaconda in your system, and we can easily create a environments over here. Fine. So here, so let's start. So let me just copy this path so that I can just open the VS Code from here. Um, so I'll just do cd into this path and type code dot. So this is my VS Code and completely blank. Okay, this is my folder structure, and here you can see it's completely blank over here. Fine. So the first step is to create an environment for the project. So let's try to create an environment. To create environment, let me go to terminal and click on new terminal. And here, let me just change that to command prompt. Fine, here. So let me just type the conda create hyphen n. So I'll just name this as Euron mental Euron health chatbot. I'll just tell here mental health chatbot, mental mental health chatbot. Okay, and the Python version I'll be using here is 3.9. Okay, so make sure you install the same version of Pythons whatever I've installed, so that so in future you'll not have any kind of dependency issues. Okay, if you are just installing some other version of the Python, so if you are just doing all the pip installation for the dependencies, okay, there could be a lot of problems in terms of dependencies. So make sure you use the same version what I'm using it. Okay, so it's Python 3.9. So let me just do enter. And let me give the permission over here. Yes. So right now it's creating an environment. So let's wait. Okay, so environment got created. Now the next step is to activate that particular environment. So let me just activate that. So to activate this, let me just type it. So Conda activate environment names. What is the environment name? It's Euron mental health chatbot. Okay, and do enter. All right, so right now I'm inside this environment. So the next step is to create an environment file. Sorry, create a requirements.txt, which basically help us to do all the necessary dependencies which we use in our project. Let me just go here, create a new file. I'll just name this file as requirements ents requirements dot txt. All right, so here I have already the requirements with me. Let me just try to copy that. So this is some of the requirements which we're going to use in a project, like LangChain Llama Index. Hastig is not required. Okay, fast API. We need request. We need python.env. Okay, just try to copy this requirements and do save. And let's try to install this requirements. To install this requirements, we'll do pip install hyphen r requirements dot txt. REMENTS requirements dot txt and do enter. So it will install all the dependencies. Okay, so it will take few minutes. Let's wait. So you can just fast forward the video. It will take few minutes for the installation. So installing all the dependencies. Okay, so it will take few minutes. All right, so this is done. So now let's create a folder structure. So before creating a folder structure, let's add a very important file, that is .env. So inside this .env, let's try to add all our key variables, like for example, open API key. Okay, all these keys will be adding inside the .env. So let me just copy and paste that. So already have a key over here. So make sure you just add your key. So this is my key. Okay, I have pasted open API key over here. All right. So now let's create a folder structure. So here the first file we're going to add is main.py. So main.py. The next will have one folder called data. Okay, so because even the chatbot will gonna use our documents, the documents the based on our document. So if the user is trying to ask any of the questions, okay, we'll try to do the search within our documents, okay, to reply in the bot, right? So even we're gonna add our own document. So let me just create a folder for that called data, and let's add one document now itself. So I'll just go to I have the sample document. Let me just copy that. So inside the data, so I have this something called stress management. Let me just copy that and let me just paste that inside my project. So you're on mental health chatbot. So within the data, I'm just pasting that. Okay, stress management. So let even I can just see from here. So this is the data stress management.txt. Fine. So here, so this is all about the stress. Like stress is a natural part of life, especially during exams. So here I've just added the sample, some dummy text. Okay. When I say dummy, I mean like it's very small text, but you can just add any of the document here. Okay. So that whenever you're trying to ask anything from the chatbot, okay, it will try to first check within your documents to reply in the bot. Okay. So here in this .txt, so we have the stress management, so how we can just manage the stress. Okay, have few pointers here. Okay, some habits. Okay, so this is what the in the data we have added. Fine. So next, apart from that, so let's create one more a folder. I'll just name this folder as chatbot UI. Okay, so inside this chatbot UI, so we're gonna add all the front end part. Okay, so we'll have three sections here. Like here we'll have something called index.html inside the UI. Okay, so later we at the end of the after adding the all the scripts, okay, later we're gonna add the code for the index.html. So we'll have the index.html. So right now I'm just creating a basic folder structure. Okay, we'll have the index.html, and then we have the styles, sty les styles.css, and even let's add the JavaScript. Okay, so I'll just call this as chatbot.js. Okay, fine. So this is this folder is contains all related about to the front end. Okay, so chatbot UI. Fine. So first, let's start with the main.py. So here we're gonna add this script. Okay, so this will be our fast API server. So so what I suggest is before getting into the server part, so let's try to add the models. Okay, not models, logger crisis. Okay, so let's start with the main.py itself. Fine. So let me write the code for that. I'm just cross checking. So we have the requirements.txt. This is done. env done. Now let's start with the main.py. Fine. Okay. So first in the main.py, and let me just close all these files. Okay, so first let me just write down, then I'll explain like why we are doing all those things. Okay, so first let's try it for import OS, then from fast API, import fast API. So F is capital and API is capital, and from uh, .env, from the .env import load.env. Then so here we're gonna create one more file called models. So here we'll have all the information with respect to the models.py, and inside this models.py, so let me okay, so first let me just write down inside the models.py. Okay, we from pydantic, from pydantic. Okay, so import base model. I'll explain what is this. Okay, so base model, and so here we're going to create a class called chat request, and here I'm gonna pass the base model, and here we'll have something called session ID of the type str and we'll have the query, and we'll have the query of the type str. All right, so here inside this models.py, okay, so this is what the script I've just added. So this basically defines a simple pydantic model which is used to structure and validate the incoming request data for your fast API endpoints. Okay, so for this, so that's what we are importing that base model from the pydantic. So this is a Python library which is used for the data validation, for the serializations, on for the parsing, okay, for the various reasons is used, we use this called pydantic. Okay, so that's what, so from the pydantic we are importing the base model, and here we are defined a class, okay, so called a chat request. So it basically inherits all the properties from the base class. Okay, so we have this chat request where we are inheriting all the properties of the base model. So this model represents having the standard structure of a JSON request. Okay, so all those properties will be inherited. So here we'll have two things. One is the session ID, which will of the string data type, and the next is the query. So this class basically accepts the two things. Okay, one is the session ID and one is the query. Okay, so this is what we have written inside the models. So here we're going to use these models inside the main.py. So inside the main.py, so I'm just telling, so from the models, from models, import that a chat request. Okay, so I'll just tell like, so where we're going to use all those things from chat request. So then from chat engine, let me create one more a file called chat engine. Here, let me just write down. So here, let me create a new file. I'll just name this file as chat engine chat engine.py. Okay, so inside the chat engine, so we're gonna basically use this script, okay, to interact with the LLM, right? So when I say LLM, it basically help us to connect with my OpenAI API, right? So to do that, first let's try to install all the libraries. So here I'll use import. See, I'm just framing my main.py, so but whatever it's required inside the main.py, I'm just parallelly trying to add the more scripts. For example, in the models.py, so we have the we have the base model, so which we have just inherited the session and the query, okay, from the base model, and we have defined the class called chat request. I have just imported that chat request over here, fine. And next I've just created a one more script called chat engine. So this chat engine basically help us to connect with our OpenAI. Okay, so first let's try to do import. So import OS, then we are importing a .env, .env. So .env. So from .env, import load .env, import load.env, and from LangChain, and from LangChain, from the LangChain OpenAI, from the LangChain OpenAI, import O is capital, import OpenAI, import OpenAI, import OpenAI. So this is not import, this is from. Why I have written capital here? All right. So the next from LangChain, from a LangChain dot chains import something called conversation buffer. So here we are using a LangChain for framework, right? So we are using this conversation. C is capital, conversation chain, CHIN chain, and from the LangChain dot memory import a conversation buffer. C is capital, conversation, CONVERSATION, conversation buffer memory, conversation buffer memory. Fine. So here, so let me just explain, okay, why we're importing this. Okay, so first we are importing OS, which basically help us to access the environment variables. Okay, and to load those environment variables, even we need this a load.env module, right? So this is the method which help us to load the variables which is present inside my .env. Okay, so inside the .env we have the open API key. To load that, we are just importing this. So then we are just importing important modules from the LangChain. So this LangChain OpenAI basically provides integration with the OpenAI API keys. So that's what. So we're gonna import that. So from the LangChain OpenAI, import the OpenAI. So next, to manage so even we are importing something called conversation chain, which manages the conversational flow using the LangChain. Okay, when I say conversation, so because we're building a chatbot, so we need certain kind of conversation flow, right? To implement that, we are importing this conversation chain. So next we have the conversation buffer. So which basically maintains the conversation memory, okay, like a context. Okay, so for whatever the chart we are implementing, so for that particular chart we need some kind of memory or a context. To implement that, we'll be using this langchain dot memory. Okay, so from langchain dot memory, we are importing conversation buffer memory over here. Fine. So next is to load the environment variables. Let me just write down. So load dot env. So to load this dot env, so we're gonna call this load dot env, and here we need to set the open API key. So open AI API key, and here this I'll get from OS module, that is os dot get env, and here I'm gonna call that name whatever I have defined inside the .env. It's called open AI API key, OpenAI API key. Fine. And so let's handle this condition. If the API key is not present, just give the value error. Okay, so if not OpenAI key, if there is no key there, just raise an exception. So raise value error, and just print it. OpenAI API key not found. Okay, not found. I can even just tell please check your .env file. All right, so this is done. So the next step is we're gonna initialize our LLM. To initialize our LLM, I'll just create a variable called LLM, and I'll be using this OpenAI, which I've just imported from the LangChain OpenAI. And to use that, so I need to pass the key. So key already we have got that from the previous code. So I'll just type here OpenAI API key, OpenAI API key, OpenAI API key, and that key I'll be getting from this open API key. So which that's what I have to define here. Okay, and the next even I need to pass the temperature. So let me just write down. So temperature TEMPERATUR temperature, and the temperature I'll just go and define it 0.7. Fine. So it basically handles the randomness. Finally, now let's store the per user memory session. To store that session, so we're gonna, so here I'll just write down the comment. So this is just we are initializing the LLM. Okay, I can just write down, show initialize. Initialize LLM. The next step, so here I can write store per user, store per user memory sessions. Okay, to store that, will be first, let's create an empty dictionary. So I'll just call this as session memory, session memory memory map, and this will be the empty dictionary. Okay, so here let's define a method, then I'll explain. Okay, so how we are just storing this memory sessions. So let me create a method called get response. Get response. So get response. So this response will have the session ID. Okay, so this session ID and of the type str, and we have something called a user query. Okay, so user query of the type str, and the return type of this method will be str string. Okay, so if session id, if session id not in session memory map, if not in the session memory map, so just update, just call this, just update the memory. This is a variable I've created. Just call this, just initialize this conversation, conversation before memory, conversation before memory, and even let's update our session memory map, and here I'm gonna pass the session ID, and that will be updated from conversation chain. Here I'm gonna pass LLM. I'll explain just a second. Here we'll have the LLM is equal to LLM. So this LLM is coming from here. Okay, so we are initialize the LLM, and so we'll have the memory. Memory is equal to memory, and we set the verbose. So verbose is set to true. Then so here we have now conversation. We have this conversation, and this conversation is coming from session memory map. Okay, and inside this we have the session ID. Okay, and the return from this, will be conversation dot predicate, predicate, and the predicate will be input is equal to user query. Okay, so let me just explain this code now. All right. Okay, so here, so first we start with importing the things. Okay, so this I have already explained it. So next, even we have loaded, to load the environment variables, we are just using this load dot env. So next, here we have defined or the code which basically help us to access the open API key, right? So from here, that is from the LLM. Okay, so this is the place where we initialize the LangChain LLM. Okay, so it initializes the OpenAI's model. So here we are using the OpenAI model, right? So here we are just telling OpenAI, OpenAPI key, and the temperature is this. Okay, and so here, so next, the next temperature is all about the randomness. Okay, so if you have a higher number, it means that more creative. Fine. So next we have defined a dictionary called session memory map. So it initializes a dictionary to keep track of individual user conversation history based on the session ID. Fine. So here we have defined a method called get response. So here it takes two parameters. Okay, one is the session ID and one is the user query. Okay, so session ID, it's basically a unique identifier for each user or you can say for each session to retain the conversational context, because whenever the user start typing any of the queries inside the chat bot, so it will create internally one session id, okay, for that user. So that is what the session id over here, okay. So next we have the user query. So this is a text query from the user, okay. So this is how it the logic of the function works. So first it checks if the conversation history exists for the session id, okay. If the conversation exists, okay, so we go to the just basically it will try to return, for example, okay. So if there is no history exit, okay, assume like there is some new user who's trying to chat, so if there is a no history for that particular session id, so we'll try to create the new conversational memory instance for the session, okay. So that's what we are just done here, okay. So inside this get response, we are passing the session id and the user query, and if that session id is not the inside my session memory map, then try to create what a session mapping, okay. So just try to create a session for that a user, okay. So that's what the meaning of conversation buffer memory is. So next we are initializing a conversation chain, so with the llm and the memory instance, okay. So this is how we do it. So we are just taking that session id, okay, and here we are just initializing that, okay. So to initialize that, we're using this conversation chain, okay. So here we need to pass the llm. So this is what the llm is, openai, and so here we are passing the memory, okay. So this is what the memory is, and we are just setting this verbose is equal to a true. All right, and finally we're gonna use this dot predict method of this conversation chain to generate an AI response based on the previous context and the current query. So if there is a session exist, okay, always it will try to look for the memory, okay. So that's what you need to remember. And even finally what it will return, it will try to return this conversation, basically it will return the generated AI response, okay, and the return type will be string. Fine. So this is what the entire flow is. So if I just want to tell in the flow chart, okay, first the user will send a query, so it will try to hit this get response. So it will try to send the two things, one is the session id and the query user query. So if the session query exists, okay, if it is exist, okay, then retrieve the conversation chain, that's it. If there is no memory, if there is no session id, then it will try to create a new conversation chain plus memory. Again, finally we're gonna hit this conversation dot predict, okay, so where it will generate the ai response, and finally the response from that llm will be sent, okay. So this is what the return from the get responses, okay. So now if I just go back, let me just save this, control s, let me just go back to now main.py, okay, so where I was coding. So inside the main.py, so we have just import from the models, importing the chat request, and now from the chat engine, so from chat engine, so this is what the chat engine we have defined. From the chat engine, try to import a get response, okay, get response. All right, fine. So now next let's implement one more script. So here I'll just name this script as, I'll just name this script as a crisis, okay. So crisis is something, so if someone is trying to send a message to a chatbot, which is kind of a suicidal, or if they have the keywords like I want to kill myself, or I want to die, or something which is like have a message has a hopelessness, right, or worthless, okay, so or I'll give up, or something like which is more of suicidal, okay. So whenever you have such kind of inputs to the chatbot, so we need to send some kind of a safety messages with certain helpline numbers, okay. Even we'll try to add that in our chatbot. So to implement that, let me just go and create a new file. I'll just name this file as crisis.py. So crisis.py. Fine. So here for the crisis.py, so I already have a code. Let me just copy that and paste it. So here let me just copy. Okay, so this is the code for crisis.py. Okay, so here, so from importing where from typing we're importing the list. So this typing module has the list. Okay, so data type. So we are just importing that. So here we have defined the list of crisis related keywords like suicidal, suicide, kill myself, want to die, hopeless, worthless, can't go on, give up, okay, ending it all, no reason to live, right? So all these are the keywords, okay, so which basically help us to detect if the user message contains any kind of indication of suicidal or the crisis related thoughts. So if we have this thing, then we need to send the safety message. So is what the safety message we have set up, that it sounds like you're going through a really tough time, okay, not alone, okay, so all this information. And here we are just sending some of the helpline numbers from India, US and UK, fine. So so next, so we have just defined that particular method, so where it will try to call this safety message. Okay, so contains the crisis words of the type boolean, it will try to return a boolean. So here we are just checking, okay, so just try to convert this entire text, whatever that is being passed here, into a lowercase, then see if that text contains these keywords on the top. Okay, this is a crisis keywords, so keyword in the text lower for the keyword in the crisis, if this true, so then try to send this. Okay, so this is what it will be returned. Okay, we'll send the safety a message over here. All right, so here fine. So this is what the crisis.py we have defined. So let me just save this and let's import that in our main.py as well. So here I'll just write down. So from crisis. So from crisis import contains crisis keywords, and even let's try to import the message also. So we have returned that as a safety message. Fine. So this is what we have declared. Okay. Now let's try to implement the logging also. So for that, let me just go and create a new file. I'll just name this file as a logger.py. Okay, logger.py. Let me just paste the code for this. Already have the code. Okay, so here so this is the logger.py, and let me just explain what is happening here. Okay, so first we are importing like import OS, import CSV, then we have import date time. So here, so first, so CSV is basically to read and write the CSV files. Okay, so whatever the logs we are generating. Okay, so in the terms of CSV, we're just importing the CSV, and let's see like where we are using the CSV over here. Okay, so here, the first we have defined the function called log chat. So it will try to take 4 parameters. Okay, one is the session ID. Okay, next we have the query, next we have the response, and we have is crisis also. What is the session ID? So it's a unique identifier for the user session. So next we have the query. So this is the user's input, right? Or you can say a query as well, query text. So next we have the response. There's a chatbot's response text. And next we have the is crisis. This is a boolean indicating if the message contains some kind of crisis related keywords like suicidal, right? And so this is what the method is. So here we have defined a two variables called log file and file exist. So this basically check the existence of the file. Okay, so here first in the log file, so we have given the log file name as a chat log.csv. Okay, and so here it will try to check whether this particular file is present or not. So if it is exist, right, then try to uh, uh, so check whether the file already exists to avoid writing headers. Okay, I mean like whenever you want to overwrite it, so in case if you don't want to overwrite those chat log.csv, then just we are just checking that. Okay, so this os.pod path.is file basically checks whether the file exists or not. That's it. Fine. Okay, so that's what. So os.path is while log file, and the log file is chad log.csv, which is not there. So when I try to execute this, so this file will be created, okay, to log the information. Okay, so this is where we have just return the logic. So with open a log file, just open this log file chat log.csv. So it opened the CSV file in the append mode. Can you see? It's in append mode. So if the file does not exist, then it get created. Okay, this is what the append mode is. Fine. So here first we are creating a the file name. Okay, there's a chatlog.csv. So then we are checking the file existence, whether it's there or not. Fine. So now we are using this with open. So first we're going to pass the log file in the append mode, and if file is not there, okay, it will try to create it or generate it. Fine. So here the new line we have just set to the a space here. Okay, so it basically we need to give this, okay, so that it can handle the process with the different operating systems. Okay, this is something which you can just add this, or you can just remove. Generally, to avoid the errors, you can just give this new line. This is what the space we have given. Okay, so next is encoding. So encoding we have just set to UTF-8 as a CSV file. Fine. So next, so this is the place where the initialization is taking place. So that is the initializing the CSV writer object. So we are just doing CSV dot writer, and we are just writing onto this a CSV file. So this is what the CSV file is. Fine. So here it will try to check if the file is newly created. Okay, so if not file exists, writer dot write now, we need to write the timestamp, then the session ID, then the query response, and the crisis flag. Fine. So this is how it will be recorded inside our log file. Fine. And so this is the place where the log entry is happening. So writer dot write row. So we are writing the date, time now, the current time, session ID, query response, as well as this crisis flag over here. Okay, so this is what the logging is. So let me just save this. Okay, so whenever the user is trying to add some information, okay, automatically the session ID is being captured, and every time it will try to log that particular information inside our chat log.csv. Okay, so this is what we are doing it, and let's even try to import that inside our main.py file. So here let me just write down. So from logger, import log chat. Okay, that's what the method we have defined, right? You can see. So log chat. All right, so now so we are left with to read this document, right, the stress management. So let me create one more script called doc engine. Okay, so let me just create a file. I'll just name this file as doc engine .py. Okay, let me just drink water. Okay, sorry. Okay, so here let me import OS, and from llama. So here we're going to use the llama index core. So llama index. First, let me just write down the next plane. Okay, llama index core import vector store index and simple directory reader, and from llama index dot llms dot openai import openai as llama openai. Make sure the caps, okay, so add the proper caps here. So it's open from llama index dot llms dot openai, import the openai as llama openai. Okay, fine. So here we are importing three things. Okay, first is the OS. We know why we go with OS, to access the environment variable, correct? Next we are importing the vector store index, so which basically creates a searchable vector index for the document which we have uploaded, correct? So next we have the simple directory reader, which loads and read the documents from the directory. So this both the things, that is a vector store index class as well as the simple directory class, is being imported from the .core module. So next, we are importing this Llama OpenAI. So this is a Llama index, you can say a wrapper around the OpenAI's API for querying the indexed data. Okay, it's like a wrapper on the top of OpenAI. Okay, this is what the class we have imported. All right, so now let's try to initialize the Llama index with the OpenAI API key. To do that, let me just write down Llama. We're going to use this Llama 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 LLM. Let me just define this as Llama LLM, and here I'll call this Llama OpenAI, and here I need to pass the model. So the model I'm going to use here is GPT 3.5 Turbo. I'll use GPT 3.5 Turbo. Okay, again, in case you want some more advanced model, you can just use that. So next, I'm gonna pass the API key because even we need this information. And API key will get it from the environment, that is os dot get env get env. And so the environment name which we have set there is OpenAI API key. OpenAI API key. Okay, so what does this line of code is doing? So it basically initializes the OpenAI GPT 3.5 model with help of this Llama index. Okay, so from here we are just initializing it, and so this is basically just fetching the Open API key from the .env model. Fine. So now the next step, let's load the documents from the directory. So for that, let me just write down documents, CUM in documents, and I'll be using this simple directory reader to load the data. So here we have defined that stress management inside the data. Let me just write down that data dot load data. Okay, so it basically reads all the supported document types. So if you're going with the simple directory reader, so here you can pass either PDF, txt, or even you can just pass the docs, that is a word document extension like docx. So here we use the simple txt. In case if you have some kind of any PDF, you can just try to upload that also. All right, so load data. So next, so after this, it will try to convert these documents into a structured format which is suitable for the indexing. Okay, to do that, this is what we are just calling, okay, simple directory reader. Okay, so now the next step, let's try to create a vector store index. So to do that, let me just define a variable called index, and here I'll call this a vector store index, which I've just vector store index that is from documents. In the vector store index, we have a method called from documents, and here I need to pass the documents. What is the documents? That has been defined in the previous step. There's a documents. So I'll just tell here directly documents. I'm referring to this documents over here. Okay, it will try to convert. Basically, it converts the loaded document into a vector embeddings using the OpenAI embeddings. Okay, so this is a very important step, right? So it stores these embeddings in an index that allows the semantic search and the retrieval. Okay, this is a very important step. Here we are trying to convert the entire the data which we have in the form of index, right? In the form of vectors. Okay, vector embeddings. Fine. So next, now let's try to create a query engine. To create a query engine, let me just define here query engine, and I'll just call this index, which I just defined just now. So index dot as query engine. So here we need to pass what? We need to pass the LLM. So what is the LLM? So LLM is already defined on the top. This is the Llama LLM. Okay, so this basically transforms this vector index into a query engine. So when I say query engine, so you can just try to query the documents. Okay, so you can just try to ask the questions. Okay, so based on like whatever you have uploaded inside document, so you can write to ask the questions from that particular document. Okay, so this is what the query engine does. Now let's try to define this query function so that it should execute. So the last part of code. So here let's define a method. I'll just define a method as query documents, and here let me just uh, take this query user of the type str, and the return type from this will be str. And here what it will return, it will try to return the str query from the query engine, whatever you're getting it, query engine dot query. And so here we're going to pass the user query. Okay, this is what the output that is being returned from the query engine is being sent. Okay, this is what the return is. So here what is the user query? It's a text query from the user, and finally it will try to return the AI generated response from your index documents. That's what it happens. That's it. First the user will send a query, then query engine dot query will just pass a particular query, and finally get a response. That's it. Okay, let me just save this now. So this is done. All right, almost we have just completed everything. Let me just try to import that in the main.py. So along with that, that is from doc engine, import a query documents. Okay, so query documents. All right. So now, okay, so now let's try to add CORS middleware. Okay, so cross middleware. So what is this cross middleware? So this middleware, because right now in the main.py, okay, so we're gonna even create an fast API. Okay, apart from fast API, when you try to send any of the data from your web application, okay, so it should basically communicate that with your API. Okay, to do that, so we need to add this cross middleware. Fine, let's try to add that cross middleware. To add the cross middleware, so that basically we need to import from the fast API itself. Okay, so from fast API dot middleware, so dot middleware dot cors import cross middleware. Okay, so this is what you need to do, the import, and we need to add that logic also below. Okay, I'll add it. Fine, so this is done. So now let's try to load now let's try to load the environment variables. So load.env. So this is done. So the next step is to initialize the app, because we are building the fast API, right? So I'll be creating a called app, and I'll just initialize this fast API, open and close the bracket. So this is done. All right. So now I'll just use this middleware code, have the middleware. So which basically what this part of code which you're going to paste now, so it will try to from the front end I can access the back end. Okay, so that's what this code is doing. Okay, so this is what the meaning of CORSS. Okay, cross. Let me just paste that. So it's app dot, so app is already initialized here. Okay, app dot add middleware. Okay, add middleware, and so we need to close the bracket also here. Okay, so here, okay, so here what is happening, so it basically allows, let me just write down the comment, it allow CORS for front end to access the backend. All right, so now let's try to add the routes here. Let me just add the code for that. Okay, so here we're just defining the route endpoints. Okay, so this is my route endpoint. So first is route. So which basically shows the welcome message, that is welcome to AI powered mental health chatbot. So here we have defined the two endpoints. One is the slash chat, okay, and the other one is the slash document chat. Okay, so here the slash chat basically help us to chat based on the user query. Okay, so this is the post request. Okay, so you can see, so it accepts the post request. So first it will try to check for the crisis words. Okay, as soon as the user sends the data, this is what the query is. So it will check for the crisis keywords, okay, using this contains crisis keywords. You can see this is what the method we have defined. Chat memory, it will have the session ID and the user query, and first we will try to check the crisis keyword. Fine. So if there is no crisis is detected, then get this response from the LLM through this get response, which I've already defined it. Correct. So in route now, we are just stitching all these components which you have built. Where is that? So here we have get response where we are passing the session ID and the user queries. So finally, we're gonna log that information. That is a log users interactions and the responses. Okay, so that will be logged inside the CSV file. And finally, we're gonna return the AI generated response. And finally, we have the one more endpoint called slash doc chat. So this receives this also receives the post request with the user query, but here it will try to search inside our vector database, right? So that's what we have used inside our doc engine.py, okay, where we are just creating this index, okay, query engine. From there I'm able to get the response, and finally it will try to get the response from the documents itself. Okay, so this is what our slash doc chat will do it. Fine. So let me just save this and let me just run this just to check if everything is working fine, because this is the first test we are doing after writing so much of code. So let me just run this, then we can add the front end. Okay, if this is working fine, so I'll just tell here uvcon UNVICORN UVCon main app host 127. This is my local host 0.0.1 uh, hyphen port 8000 and reload. Okay, let me just do enter. UVCon spelling UVI made the mistake. You can see already started. Okay, there is no module. Okay, let's try to install that. No module in LangChain OpenAI. From LangChain OpenAI import the OpenAI chat engine. Okay, let's see, there is some error in the chat engine. Let me just do Control C, then I can rerun Control C. So inside the chat engine, what I have defined, so is capital, this is correct. LangChain LANG underscore OpenAI. So what is not defined? LangChain OpenAI. Let me just try to do the pip install if the LangChain is installed or not. Let me just check once again. Okay, LangChain open is not there. Okay, let's do pip install LangChain hyphen OpenAI. Now let me rerun this. Right now it's loading. Yeah, it should reflect now. Yeah, you can see I got a root that is welcome message. Welcome to the AI powered mental health chatbot. Let me just go to the docs. Okay, please get into docs. Okay, to see the routes here. So I can see two things. One is the chat with memory and chat with the documents, right? So first, let me just go to this post method and let me just click on this try here. And here I need to provide the session ID. So you can just tell some session ID like new 01. Okay, and here let me just write the query here. Okay, and I'll just write the query like how can I manage stress from exam. Okay, instead of that, because even the stress is already there in our document. Okay, so let's try to check with some other message. So here can just tell here like I am feeling overwhelmed with exams. Okay, let me just click on execute. Yeah, you can say I'm getting some response like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Exams can be a lot to handle. Are you studying for the multiple exams at once? Okay, I'm getting some query. Okay, so it's absolutely working fine. Okay, so now let's go and test this with the document. Okay, for the document, let me just add our stress because here inside a document we have all related to stress, right? So let me just add that. Uh, like, what are the ways I can just tell here? Like new 02. Here I'll write a query. How how can I manage how I can manage stress from exams. Okay, so it should basically give from the document. Okay, you can see practice deep breath exercise. Okay, so you can see I'm getting that from the document itself. Okay, so this is what I've added inside the document. So from the document I'm able to get this. All right, so it's absolutely working fine. So both are endpoints. Now let's try to add the front end. Let me just stop this server right now, then we can restart it. All right, so now we are just left with three things. One is the index.html, CSS, and the chatbot.js. So first, let's try to add the chatbot.js. Okay, so this is the JavaScript. So this you can, if you don't know about the JavaScript, just try to add the code here. So which basically help us to add the chatbot into our website. Okay, so that's it. So let me just go and add that. And let me close all the other files. All right, so this is my chatbot.js. Let me just do control S over here. So just to explain you, okay, so here we have define the API endpoint and the session handling. So here we are just set the, this is how we defined the variables inside the JavaScript using the constant. This is my constant, okay, not a variable, it's a constant, a kind of a variable which helps us to store the value, okay. So it's API URL, we are hitting the same URL, like slash chat, right? This is the local fast API endpoint. So next we have the session ID. So this session ID is a temporary user session. So here we are just taking some random session ID like user, and we're just adding some random value to that. Okay. Like user underscore 44597. Okay. So we are just taking math dot random and multiply that with some number. Okay. So next we have added this toggle chat. Okay. So this toggle, this basically show the chatbot UI at the right hand side of my website, so where the user can click onto that and chat it. Okay, this is what the toggle chat function is. Okay, this is the visibility, toggle chat window visibility. So next we are appending the chat to the chat box. So here we have just set the parameters like role and the text. So here the role is basically who sends the message. Okay, so whether it's you or a bot, and the text is the message content. So here, so this is how it works. It gonna create and insert a new message, a bubble in your chartbot UI, chartbox UI, and automatically scrolls down, so that whenever you're adding more and more questions, so your chatbot will keep on growing. Okay, so that's what we have just set here. Okay, so next, finally, we have the main logic. So where we are just sending a message to the fast API chatbot over here. Okay, so send message, and we're just hitting that API over here. Okay, so this is what the code for the JavaScript. So next, let me just paste the index.html and the CSS. This is just a styling over here, right? So let me just paste the. All right. So here, let me just add the index.html. So this is my index.html. Let me just save this, Control S. And this is all about the HTML page, okay, the dummy HTML page. And here I can see that icon at the bottom. And next, let's try to add the CSS, that's the styling part. Now let's add the styling part over here. Fine. So the style dot CSS, and let me just paste it. Okay, so it's all about the styling. Okay, if you don't know about HTML and CSS, that's okay. So you can just try to add the same code. So HTML is hypertext markup language. We'll try to design the front end with the paragraph, okay, some basic headings, okay, and this is the styling part, okay, how our website should look. Let me just close this everything and do Control S, and let me just open the HTML. So I'll go to my project structure. So this is my Euron mental health chatbot, and even I can see this chatbot UI, and here we have the index.html. Let me just open this in the Edge, Microsoft Edge. So yes, so this is how our chatbot page is looking. Sorry, this is how our page is looking, and below you can see the chatbot icon. So right now I think it's disabled because you can't see, because you can find my face over here, right? So let me just hide my face, and let me just show the icon. All right, so now I hope you can see this chatbot here over here, right? So this is a Mind Easy chatbot. This is just a dummy name we have given. Okay, Mind Ease, and it is all dummy links over here. Okay, so this is a chatbot. Now let's try to execute this and check if everything is working fine or not. Okay, so here, so what I can do, let me just go and run the server first. Let me go to VS Code, and here let me just run the server Unicorn. All right, so it's running now. So let me just go back, and here let me expand my chat, and here let me just write down like same question. I'll just type it. So how can I manage MANAG manage stress from exam exams and to send it. Yeah, can see I'm getting the response quickly. This is coming from the text itself, right? So we have defined it, how the from the text management. Okay, so that's what we are getting it. And apart from that, even you can just add some kind of, let's try with some crisis message like I want to give up. Let me just type that. By the way, you should not give up. Okay, so I want to give up. Yeah, we can see even this also working fine. So it sounds like you're not going tough time, and I'm getting all this helpline numbers. Okay, so yes, our chatbot is absolutely working fine. So I hope you have enjoyed it. So you can just take up this project to a next level by adding more and more features. Yes, keep learning, keep growing. All the best. Okay, and see you soon in the next new project. Bye.